Hello, I'm Chris. Welcome to my reading corner. Um, Hope you're doing well. This is going to be my top 10 reads, albeit a few more than top 10, just because I've added other things in there as well. But I've got top 10 fiction and non-fiction, as well as short story collections and graphic novels. Before I get into that, I'm just going to go through what I'm currently working on. I'm still working on Tinkers and The Cruel Sea. Those are two books that I'm going to try and read, but I've got a few other things I wanted to read first. I've decided I'm going to take this back to the library because I really want to read it, but when I started reading it, I felt like I didn't want to rush it, and I felt like I would be trying to get it back to the library for the 11th. And if I hadn't finished it, then it'd be overdue. So that one's going to go back to the library, along with Salt Slow, which I've finished now, and Tinkers when I finish it. But I'm currently reading Breakfast Champions. It's one of my favourite books. Just trying to see where I'm up to in this so far. So I'm on chapter 3. I've read about 29 pages of this so far, so that's what I'm currently reading. I'm going to put it down soon once I've read a bit more, because I'm doing a buddy read with Bob Can Read for Solarium, so I'm going to read, he's read 40 pages, I'm going to read my 40 pages as well. Before I do that, I'm going to quickly read a Bukowski story in this, Hot Water Music. I've decided that in the morning when I go to work, that's what I'm going to read. When I get to work, I'm going to read that, and then I'm going to do my journaling for the morning before I start work. So I'm going to start off with fiction first, just because that's the top one. I'm going to work my way down from the bottom to the top. So at number 10 was Mother Night by Kurt Vonnegut. This was a really good book. I can't really remember. I remember it, but I don't want to do it just misjustice by not. So I'm going to read the back of it. Whilst awaiting trial for war crimes in an Israeli prison, Howard W. Campbell Jr. sets down his memoirs on an old German typewriter. He has used such a typewriter before when he worked as a Nazi propagandist under Goebbels, though that was before he agreed to become a spy for the US military. Is Howard guilty? Can a black or white verdict ever be reached in a world that's a gazillion shades of grey? So that was really good, but I want to reread that. So that's that. And then in number 9 was No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. Now this book was quite harrowing. It was hard to read, and I feel like I've not reread it since, like I said, when I was going to be reading it and when I was in where I was and now in a better place. But I will reread it eventually. But at the minute it's not been a priority. But yeah, that's a really interesting book, how he talks about how he's not good enough, and quite interesting from that aspect. In number 8 is The Decadon House Murders, which is what it says what it does on the tin, really. That was by Yukito Ayatsui. I'm not sure if that's pronounced right. But that was a murder mystery in a Decadon house. It was really interesting. Kept you guessing till the end. It was probably the best murder mystery I read last year. I read a couple of other. I read the Murder in the Crooked House, and that was just. I found that one. I narrowed it down to 2 people, and it was one of the people, so it was a bit. Wasn't great. Well, it was great, but it wasn't. Because I knew who it was just kind of wasn't great for that aspect of it, but it was a good book. So that's that. And in number 7 is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. That's a woman who works in a convenience store and is quite happy to just plod along in this convenience store. I kind of found like a niche in books that I've never read before in a way, like in these kind of like Sayaka Murata's Earthlings, which I found I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favourite read. This I preferred this one, but I still found that one quite dark and in elements, not like a horror, but more like, you know, in a weird kind of way. The protagonist isn't likable, I guess, is the way, is one of elements of the book, and I found them really strange because I really enjoyed some of those. So that's number 7. Number 6 was Boy Parts by Elijah Clark. This book I really enjoyed. I just couldn't put it down. It's about a girl who takes pictures of boys, basically, and then she becomes, and she gets her own. I'm not sure what it's called. Like when you've got an art gallery and you've got your display. I think maybe display is the right word. But that was quite interesting. Again, she wasn't a likeable protagonist, but I quite liked her. So that's that. I'm going through these quite quickly because I've got quite a lot to go through. So we're in number 5 now. Tarzan of the Apes by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This took me by surprise because I didn't really expect much from the Tarzan books. Not because I've never seen the films or anything like that. It was just I didn't think I'd enjoy it as much as I did, but I really enjoyed it. It's about a guy who gets, well, he's a baby and gets lost in the jungle, and then he's brought up by apes. And he's from like noble birth as well. It's really interesting, really good book. I think it's ahead of its time as well from the era it was as well, and I think it was about 1920s or something like that. And then in number 4 is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Ayama. This was a brilliant book. It was basically, say I went looking for a book on, I don't know, crocheting or knitting for examples. So I'd go to the library and ask the librarian and get sent to this woman who sat there, and she's crafting like these, I can't remember what they were made out of, but like they had like, I think they were like cloth or something like, or something, and then she'd get the books they wanted, and then they'd also get an extra book, and it was always the extra book that was quite thought-provoking to each of them. And you can kind of see how the characters are interlinked as well, which is really interesting. So it's a really good book. It's one that I actually wish I owned. In fact, yeah, I owned one of the top 4, but apart from that, I wish I owned the rest. So in number 3 is Case Study by Graham McRae Burnett. Now this was a really interesting story about a female protagonist who, she's a sister, takes her own life, and then she's looking into that with this psychiatrist who you're not quite sure if he's he's a fraud or not, or whether he did actually do this, and he seems to see right through the girl, but you kind of see how she's kind of using a different personality, so you can kind of see how how it affects her mental health. You see a decline in her mental health throughout the book, which is quite intriguing, really. That it's been portrayed in this way, but it's a really interesting book, and it's definitely one I wish I owned. And I highly recommend it. I know Bob Conreader's just read it and he really enjoyed it, and I'd recommend it. And I've got His Bloody Project to read by him as well, which I'm looking forward to. And then number 2 was The Sound of Waves by Yukio Mishima. I really enjoyed this book. It was kind of like a love story. No, I don't want to. It's not like chick lit. Not that there's anything wrong with chick lit. It's just, I mean, it's a bit more. It's a bit more to it than that, and I'm not saying there's nothing to chick lit. I've not read any chick lit to comment, but it's like the kind of from different like social standings. I think she's well to do and he's not, and he gets tested on his personality and his I don't know what I'm trying to say. He's like his gumption kind of thing. He's how he feels inside, like what kind of a person he is what I'm trying to say, which is really interesting. When you see it happen, well, when you read it happen and it kind of unfolds and you're like, wow, you know, it's really good. I really recommend it. I do like Yukio Mishimari. I've got 3 of his novels that I've read so far, but do want to get more. And then my top book of the year was Stoner by John Williams. Now I know a lot of people prefer Butcher's Crossing. Butcher's Crossing I haven't read yet, but Stoner I read twice last year. I read it and I was thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, and then I decided to reread it because I was thinking about it so much. It's about a guy who lives in a farming family, and it looks like he's going to uni to become know more about agriculture, and then he becomes instead he finds his love for literature and becomes an English literature teacher, for want of a better word. Not really sure if it was English literature is the actual subject he teaches, but he becomes that, and you see his life as he goes through that, as well as he meets a woman and has a child with her, and their relationship and his relationship with the child becomes a bit, I'm not sure what the word is. Again, I'm not very good with words sometimes, but like the relationship becomes, I won't say bitter, but it becomes distant is the word I'm looking for. Distant, like between, not because he doesn't want a relationship with his child, but because it kind of gets forced on him that it becomes distant. I just really enjoyed it. It's definitely one I want to get, and I'm thinking about buying it so I can reread it, to be honest with you. 'Cause it's such a good book. So that's my top 10 fiction. I'm going to go on with my non-fiction now. I don't want to take too much time over these because I've got a lot to go through. Again, I'm going to start from the bottom up. So number 10 was Countdown to Lockdown by Mick Foley. Mick Foley is a wrestler. He's known as Cactus Jack, Dude Love, and also Mankind from WWE. I read his Tales of Sweat Socks or something like that. That was brilliant. I was actually supposed to pick tickets up from my mate's parents' house for Bolton Wanderers football match, and I was sat reading that and I went, oh, I need to go and get these tickets. So I was like, I ran out the door because it was a walk away, but I just thought I'd better go because it was like I should have been there I was late, so. This one I enjoyed, but not quite as much as that one. So yeah, but it was good. It was a good book. I enjoyed it because I find Mick Foley's quite a interesting character, and he's somebody I enjoyed watching wrestling, especially as Cactus Jack. And he's he's hardcore, and I mean I don't know if anybody watches wrestling who watch my channel, but like the Hell in the Cell where he got thrown off and stuff like that. He had some brilliant matches, especially with Triple H as well and The Rock. Brilliant. So that's that. But I enjoyed it. I would recommend it if you're a wrestling fan, but if you're not a wrestling fan, I'd probably give it if you're not a wrestling fan, I'd probably suggest his first novel, his first non-fiction book he did was really interesting over that one. But if you're into wrestling, then I would recommend it. And then in number 9 is 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Hanff. Now I found this book quite interesting, but the problem I found with it is I really enjoyed the letter side of it, but then when it was her diary entries, although they were interesting diary entries, I just preferred her letters more. That's the only reason that this is so low in the list of books. Because had she, I don't know, I feel like the letters, there was more heart to them because you were seeing two sides of the coin where it was just saying how she felt about things in London and in the second half. And like in the first half, it was books she wanted to order, which was quite interesting because it's not like your normal, you know, you're not thinking, oh, that's a normal book. But I suppose because she was in America and trying to get these books over there, she was asking somebody like a bookshop in England. But I suppose if she wanted any other books, they'd be readily available in America, I guess. But yeah, she does pick some interesting books. So it was a really good book. I'd recommend it if you know, it's interesting. But I wouldn't. I prefer the first half of it. I'm not sure it's 84 Charing Cross Road is the first part of it, and then the second part I can't remember what it's called now. But I preferred the first half of it. And then number 8, quite an interesting one here. After Nature by Jedediah Purdy. So I like the band Rosetta, and they're on Audio Tree, a live set, which is really good. It's about 40 minutes long. They're quite heavy though. If you're not into heavy metal, I'd say they're quite. I won't say they're too abrasive. They're not like. It's not like, I don't know what I'm thinking of, but like it's not like growls and things like that. It's just, you know, it's passionate music, I'd say, more than like indecipherable lyrics. I mean, it's not exactly decipherable, but they are really good. But they're talking about that, and it's about like how nature and trees and what politics can do for nature, and because obviously this world is, you know, we need to look after our trees and our plants and animals and stuff, because we're not going to have them forever if we don't. And looking at like what politics can do, what politics affect can, how politics can affect the nature of the world. It was really interesting. I'm going to be honest, a lot of it went over my head, but I did find it really interesting. So that's number 8. And then number 7, a surprise one for me, because I was so not willing to read this, because I was willing to read it, but I would never actually, I was thinking I'm not going to read that. Because I heard somebody say, oh, make a comment, or I heard somebody say it's not great, but I actually really enjoyed it, and it's How to Run an Indie Label by Alan McGee. I genuinely didn't think I'd enjoy this as much as I did, but I think the thing is with music books, or, well, actually, a book about any subject, if the person writing it is investing in what they're writing, then it's great. It's really interesting. Like, I read, also, I'm going to add a caveat, I did read Kim Gordon's book about Sonic Youth, which I felt was good, but there was a lot of back and forth on it, and it was written a bit bitterly about the breakup between her and Thurston Moore, and I appreciate it probably was a bad breakup for her, but I just felt like it was pushed in the book more than it needed to be, and I think it should have been more passionate about the music. It would have made this list, but it didn't. Whereas Alan McGee, he was very passionate, and it was interesting reading about smaller bands I didn't know that were actually on Creation, like Slowdive and like My Bloody Valentine. So it was quite interesting from that respect. I mean, I wasn't really that interested in the Oasis stuff, just because, well, everyone knows Oasis, you know. So, but definitely for the smaller bands and for the way he had made the label was really interesting. In number 6 was Coming Alone by Warren Ellis. Now this was a book, who's a comic book creator, and it's basically just, it's like, I don't know what to say, like maybe a memoir or diary entry, something like that, and it's like one for each week, and it's quite interesting. I was actually thinking of reading it again this year for like put over the year, but it's just like what he thinks about comics, the state of comics. But I love the fact that at the end of each entry or memoir or whatever you want to say, there's like albums to listen to, or graphic novels or books to read, and that side of it's really interesting as well. So it was really interesting all around. I think I didn't I found it on eBay because I was looking for Transmetropolitan on eBay, and then searched Warren Ellis, and that stumbled across that and found that really. So and then it was reasonably cheap, so I picked it up. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm going to reread that actually this year as well. Just like for that reason, it was just really interesting. A lot of things I didn't know, especially about the comic book industry, and it was just interesting. In number 5 is what I talk about when I talk about running, by Haruki Murakami. Now, I know Haruki Murakami is quite a problematic author to some people, but I do enjoy Norwegian Wood. I'm yet to read any more of his other than Norwegian Wood, but that's one of my favourite books. But yeah, I just found it really interesting because I just thought, oh, it's all going to be about running. But then when I saw about the music side of it, and then, you know, finding about him as a person as well was quite interesting, and the music he liked and how he collected vinyl and, you know, and stuff like that. And it's really interesting. Like, I think anything like artistic, like music and books and anything like that, like films, is very quite subjective to the person. Like, some people might not necessarily like the books I like, but then, you know, somebody else might not like their books. Not like I might not like their books, but at the end of the day, I'm more interested in what people like than whether I like what people like. You know, like if somebody likes, I don't know, say for instance, I was listening to The Cure before. I'm going to use them as an example. I do like The Cure, but I mean, like, say somebody else didn't like The Cure. Say somebody else liked The Cure and I didn't. I'm more interested that they like The Cure than me saying, oh, I don't like The Cure. You know, it's more about if I can find out something somebody likes, that's more interesting than me saying that's rubbish, don't read that. You know, like before I mentioned chick lit, I haven't read any chick lit. I would read chick lit. I have nothing against it, but I'm just saying it's kind of, it just gives me more to read, so why wouldn't I? You know, that's my kind of, if I don't necessarily, if I've not heard a band that I'm not sure about, or, you know, I keep seeing like Sleep Token about and at work and around and stuff, and it's not a band I've listened to really, but I'm intrigued by it. But if I like it, then it's another band I like. You know, it's about growing what I like, and I think it's more interesting to, I don't want to say praise, but like respect people's, like, what they like is cool. You know, I might not like movies people like, you like, or whatever, but I respect what you like as long as what you like is what you like, and it's not, you know, it's more. I just think there's so much out there that it's better to find out more about things people like. Anyway, enough of that tangent. But so in number 4 is Dispatches by Michael Herr. I think it's spelt like Herr, which I think is how you say like Mr. in German. This was a really interesting book. It's about Vietnam, the war, but he's not a soldier, he's a journalist over there and writing about his experiences. It was really interesting, quite harrowing to read, because the Vietnam War, I don't want to say it doesn't interest me, but it doesn't to the same aspect as, say, World War Two, just because, you know, I think it's, I'm from England, so, you know, it happened here. Well, it didn't just happen here, but you know what I mean. It happened. You know, it happened during my grandma's lifetime, which, you know, I didn't know much about it, and it was before my time. Whereas I'm interested in, you know, wide non-fiction subjects. It's just but I did find this interesting. I don't mean like I'm not interested in Vietnam, and it happened, and, you know, I am interested in all subjects, but it was really interesting though. But like I say, it's more that I enjoy stuff like World War Two fiction, non-fiction more, and like historical non-fiction with World War Two as well. Number 3, another surprise for me, was A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. Now, I thought this book would go over my head. I would have absolute no understanding whatsoever. That wasn't actually the case. And it led me to buy another book about Stephen Hawking. It's one I actually want to buy. But I found it really interesting and really thought-provoking about like where we come from and stuff like that. And it was, and black holes and stuff like that. And it was really interesting. And it's one I'd highly recommend. So yeah, that's that. And then in number 2 was Sonic Youth Slept on My Floor by Dave Haslam, which is another book about music, which I just found really interesting because the guy loves music. He was like a music was all he loved. I wouldn't say, I'm not saying he wasn't into films or whatever, but it was heavily, he'd go record shopping and digging for records, and he wasn't a record label or anything, he was a DJ, and he'd dig for records and do sets and stuff like that, and he made his way in music. He had his own zine and stuff. It was just a really interesting book to read because he was so passionate about what he was talking about and what he wrote about, and it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But my top favourite book of non-fiction this year was Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This book was so interesting. So it's about a girl whose mother dies. It's quite a sad book, really. But I think she's from Korea. Her mum's from Korea. I think South Korea, I want to say. South Korea. Yeah, South Korea. So sometimes they go over and her mum's South Korean and her dad's American. And sometimes they go over and visit family and stuff like that. And, it's quite sad. Her mum dies, and it's, I was reading it on the bus to work, and I got a bit emotional reading it. It's just such a good book, and it's really interesting to read and how she feels about her mum's loss and stuff like that. I mean, it's something I have not had to deal with as yet. It's I don't want to think about that, but it's not. It's inevitable, unfortunately. But I love mum to bits, and we are, but yeah, it was. I don't know what I'd do, to be honest. But it's just such a heartfelt book, and it's quite interesting, and she thinks about the culture, and there's food involved as well. It's not all sad and doom and gloom. It's quite, some parts are upbeat, and and she becomes in a band, and she becomes. The band's called Japanese Breakfast, and she makes an album. I think it's called Psychopomp, and it's basically that's the album she wrote. With all this in mind and stuff. So there is some happy elements in it. It's not all doom and gloom, but it's quite sad, really, in some aspects as well. But it's definitely one to read. Anyway, so that's that. Now I'm going to go on to my top 5 short story collections. I'm not going to delve too much into these because there's a lot more to go through. So I've got in number 5, The Danger of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez. This was like a short story collection, obviously, but I just really enjoyed this one, and like I say, if it's she's Argentinian author. And then in number 4 is Hit Parade of Tears by Izumi Suzuki, which is a Japanese author, which was quite interesting and had some very good different elements to her stories. And then in number 3 was Broken Stars, which was translated by Ken Liu, which is just science fiction stories, and some of them were brilliant and some of them weren't as good, but that's a typical short story collection, but it's one I'd recommend. It's one I really wish I had. And then Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca is in number 2. This one I was on holiday at the time in Morecambe, and I decided to take some books, and this was one of the ones I took, as well as Boy Parts. And it was, I'm going to read this story and then I'll pick the book up and read the other two stories after I read something else. Nope, just read it all in one go. Well, not in one go, but I mean, I didn't. Once I started reading it, I just finished it. So that's that. And then number one was Books of Blood, Volume 1 by Clive Barker. It absolutely took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting much from Clive Barker. Not to say that Clive Barker's a bad author, that sounds bad, but like, I don't know, I just wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was, and it kind of took me by surprise, and the depth of stories is really interesting, and like I say, I can't wait to read Volume 2 this year. I was hoping to have read it last year, but it's definitely on my radar for this year, so that's interesting. So that's that. And finally, I'm just going to go through the graphic novels very quickly. Just I've got 5 of those as well. I'm hoping next year I'll have 10 of each, really. Well, maybe not 10 short stories, but definitely 10 graphic novels next year, and mangas, a mixture, maybe light novels involved in that as well. We'll see. Anyway, top 5 graphic novels. So in 5 was From Hell by Alan Moore. From Hell is the retelling of like Jack the Ripper. It's really interesting. It would have been higher. I just found it, I don't know, I just felt like it took me too long, not too long to read, but like I felt like it was quite slow going, and I don't know, I feel like I need to reread it, to be honest with you. So that's that. And then Joker in number 4 by Brian Azzarello, which is a really good book. I quite like Batman books, and that's probably going to be, well, I plan on reading, like, so I've got like 4 graphic novels a month. So I've got Sweet Tooth, Sin City, and some like standalone stuff, and also, yeah, and I'm also reading some like some other, like some Batman comics as well. So it's like a mixture of the 4. So that's what I'm working on. So in number 3 is A Death in the Family by Jim Starlin. This was a book. This was actually years ago. There was a phone in to say whether you wanted the Robin to live or not. Obviously, you have to find out if he lives or not in the story. But yeah, that's a really interesting one. Also, in number 2, Black Mirror by Scott Snyder, which I believe is, I think Dick Grayson's got the cowl of Batman, which is really interesting to see. And then the final one is The Killing Joke by Alan Moore, which is just another Joker story, which is quite interesting. The Joker is a great villain. I mean, there was an actor I was thinking I'd love to see play an older version of Joker. If they ever brought him, I can't think of his name. I was talking to a guy at work about it, the cleaner, John, nice guy. I talked to him. I talk to everyone at work because I just think everyone puts food on your table. Everyone works. If they weren't doing their job, and I weren't doing my job, they wouldn't have food on the table. And I don't think anyone's below me or anyone's above me. Do you know what I mean? At work, I just think everyone's the same. We all, it's just the way I've been brought up, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it's just like I used to work. Well, I used to talk to a lot of the drivers, but I never thought the drivers were less than me, or the warehouse staff were less than me, because I work in finance. No, I'm the same as everybody else. Anyway, after that tangent, the person I'd like to think would be good playing the Joker is the guy out of Spider-Man, the Green Goblin, but I can't think of his name. I've been thinking of his name. Is it Willem Dafoe? I think it's Willem Dafoe. I just think he'd make a brilliant Joker. If they did like an older version, I know they did the Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, but if they did a Joker again, I'd love to see him play that part. Anyway, that's my top 10 novels, non-fiction, top 5 graphic novels, and top 5 short stories. I'm going to be back with a reading update probably on Friday. but it'll probably brief, quite brief, because I feel like I've done a lot of videos lately, and you know, you're probably sick of seeing my face. But yeah, I'm enjoying what I'm reading. Like I say, I'm looking forward to going. Well, I've got a cup of tea, but I've nearly finished it, so I'm going to go and make another one. Probably get a couple of biscuits and sit and read for a bit, and then I'm going to make tea soon, and then just read all night is what I'll plan on doing. I'll maybe watch a movie. I don't know yet. I watched Blitz last night. That was good. With Jason Statham and Paddy Considine or something like that. That was really good. I enjoyed that. Surprising, better than I expected. Anyway, I'm going to leave this here, and but I hope you enjoyed what you read last year. I've done my goal for this year is $200. I know it's a bit crazy, but I'm not planning on hitting it. I mean, I'm planning on hitting it. That's otherwise what's the point of having a goal. But I'm not like I've set a goal, but it's not about hitting it. It's just about I set 100 last year. I ran 155. I'm not expecting to, I'm not expecting to match that this year. But I'm just enjoying what I'm reading at the minute, and I'm enjoying reading. So we'll see how that goes anyway. But anyway, so I'm hoping this will be like top 10 of each next year. Maybe not short stories. I'm not sure yet, but I've got quite a few actually in mind, like Books of Blood, Hot Water Music, and Labyrinths already. So we'll see how we get on with that. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I will see you in the next one. Bye.